Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're so glad that you're here tonight, whether you're watching us live or if you're listening to us on a podcast. We're really glad that you decided to join the audience. We're so happy that you're here. Joe Conjal says, good evening, Rob and Joan.
Hello,
good
Joe.
Evening, Joe. I'm so glad that you're here. Marjorie Deering says, hi, y'all. Hello, Marjorie. We're glad
Marjorie.
that you're here, too. So what's new?
What's new?
Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
Oh.
George made it.
George just mukes. Okay, says, okay, I'm here, sore wing and all, but I promise to pay attention. Okay, you have a sore wing? You hurt your arm, your hand?
Maybe he's got a bird.
He's talking about himself.
Okay. All right. What's in the news? Got some new releases available, but let's go with the schedules first. Tomorrow night at 9 o'clock on the radio, and you can listen to it on the computer as well, www.wdjyfm.com. And if you live in the northern Atlanta area, 99.1 FM, tune in there and you'll hear our show at 9 o'clock. It's on for an hour. It's Doug Gardam as the author. And then Saturday episode rewind, don't forget, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's Philip Strang is the author. Next Wednesday, we've got our guest again. I think it's the third time she's been on. Terry Brown is going to be on again with her new book on Meet the Author. That's at 7 o'clock right here where you're watching now. That's March 6th. And also, let's see here, tomorrow night, Haunted Campfire Tales.
Finally.
At 7:30. Haunted Campfire Tales right here where you're watching now. It's Romantic Hauntings and Leap Year Legends.
After I've been saying it was going to be on next Thursday for the last 3 weeks, actually, it's finally here. It's going to be on tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
It's always on the last Thursday in the month. I don't know why I kept pushing it. So George says it's his right shoulder that's on the fritz.
On the fritz.
Sorry to hear that, George.
We'll send you some good thoughts and
Prayers.
Available for pre-order right now is Joe Allen Ash is the author. The Thrice Gifted Child, Shadow Journey Book 2. It's the hardcover is out now. That released on March 19th. Also just released on the 20th was Who Mourns Electra. That's C.W. Hawes. That's Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles Book 21. These are all available on Amazon. Also, Joy York, The Moonshine Murders is coming out on March 25th, I believe. And let's see here. Joe Allen Ash is March 19th is the release date on that one. They're available for pre-order, that one, Joe Allen Ash's and Joy York's. Blood and Fire, Murder and Betrayal at Osprey Point. That's by author Bill Nelson. That's available now, new release. So that's a whole bunch of new stuff.
And Joe Conjal says, cool, I'm going to make this one finally. Good. We'll be happy to have you there. I think Jess, one of Jess's fellow workers' mother, has some more ghost stories. It's if you remember the one about the little boy that lived in the house with them for years, it's from that mama.
There you go.
So
And look what came in the mail the other day. Prior restraint. That's by Stephen McGuire. He was talking about it the other day.
Yeah, the chief judge of the Federal Trade Commission. So
looks really good.
It's
in English, so
his wife sent it to us the next day.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Yep.
And Doris.
Yeah. You done?
I'm done blabbering.
All right.
Nobody wants to hear me anymore.
Let's bring Laura on.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Hello, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
We're good. How are you?
I'm good.
This is Laura Vosika, people. We're glad to have her here with us. So, how have you been doing?
Well, it's been a very interesting winter. Tennessee, we just moved here in August, and part of the reason we moved was 15 feet of snow in Duluth last winter, which meant that we sometimes spent entire weeks shoveling, plowing, pulling snow off the roof with a roof rake, if you've ever seen those. We ended up with injuries from all of this. We ended up missing work. And we both work remotely. So we packed up and we moved to a warmer climate. And what do you know? Tennessee decided to have its worst winter in 30 years.
Followed you there.
It did. It seems so. So normally they get median. Yeah.
Don't come any closer.
Right. I'll keep my distance from Florida. Yeah. Normally they have an inch or two of snow each winter, and we got hammered with 9 inches in about 36 hours. So it was a pretty rough week trying to get up and down our hill. We have a very small barn with chickens and rabbits, and they're not prepared for 5 below zero. So I was hanging up all kinds of packing blankets. I was running up and down the hill 2 or 3 times a day to defrost their water, get them some fresh water. And thank goodness that's all done. And spring is sort of here. We have daffodils in February, which, being from northern Minnesota, we're not used to. And we have a couple of brand new lambs, about 5 days old now. So that's very exciting. I've never been that close up to a brand new baby lamb in my life. So, yeah.
Big learning curve, I'm sure. You want to tell us how you started writing? When did you start writing?
Well, I started writing probably when I was 8 years old and wrote a poem. And I think it's a very good thing.
From Joe. He says, "Hi, Laura, you needed to time travel."
There you go.
We're working on it. We're trying to time travel forward, and it's going to come quicker than it does in Duluth. So I probably wrote a poem when I was 8, and I'd say it's a good thing that is lost to posterity. It was probably really stupid. And then I started a novel when I was 10, because I've often said I was born with midlife crisis. So there I was 10 years old going, it's been a whole decade and I haven't done anything with my life. So I started a novel about a little boy who gets kidnapped, and he's such a nuisance and such a trial that the kidnappers try and give him back. And I was about 10 days into this when I happened to look at my mother's bookshelf and saw The Ransom of Red Chief. And I went, oh, shoot, being 10 years old, it didn't occur to me that it's okay. I can still write my story, so I'm kind of flattered that I thought the same idea as O. Henry, but regardless, then I was writing on and off through high school. And I kind of set it aside when my kids were young for about 15 years. And then about 2006, I started writing again with this idea that had kind of been simmering in my mind for a while about this arrogant, obnoxious trombone player, which virtually every trombone player goes, well, of course. What else would we be? because I played trombone. It was my major in college, and I played semi-professionally for quite a few years in pit orchestras and things. So it's a world I know pretty well. And it was, I don't want to say it was based on this book, but no doubt this book influenced me. My favorite childhood novel was called In the Keep of Time by Margaret J. Anderson, who I would just like to give a plug here. I was lucky enough to visit a few years ago out in Oregon, and she has been a guest on my podcast, Books and Brews. So she wrote this wonderful book back in the 70s about 4 children who go into a Scottish keep, and they come out at the wrong time. So in my mind, hers is a children's book. Mine is much more, an adult novel. And in my version of it, 2 men happen to be in the same tower in different centuries, and they both fall asleep at the top of the tower, and they come out in each other's times. And they look like each other, so they're caught in each other's lives. So that makes for lots of hijinks ensue, so to speak.
So that would be the Blue Bells of Scotland?
Blue Bells of Scotland. Right. And that's actually the first book. And it was meant to be a standalone story. But my sister read it and she said, well, what happens next? And I thought, he's dead. So nothing. And I couldn't figure out, why would you even ask a question like that? So I went back and I read the ending and I realized I never said he died. So what if? That's what inspires all books, I think, in the end, is what if? What if he survived in medieval Scotland? Even though this was a horrific injury, sometimes people do. And so I wrote what happened when he survived. Yep, the Minstrel Boy is number 2. So Sean is still caught in the time of Robert the Bruce. And for anyone who knows medieval history, Scottish medieval history, this is the Battle of Bannockburn is kind of the backdrop of this whole series and the few years after it. And so if you know Braveheart, or what is the other one that's more recent, The Throne, The Steps to the Throne. I forget what the book is or what the movie is called, but there's another movie about Robert the Bruce that's more recent. And so that's kind of the historical background of these books.
Joe Conjal says, great covers. I'll show you some more, Joe, in a minute. And Marjorie Daring says, I love the book covers.
Yeah, they're very nicely done.
And Chris Paul said, I resemble that remark, but we've gone through so many remarks now, I'm not sure which one we resemble, Chris.
I bet he's talking about the trombone remark. He's a trombone player, too.
That's right.
Fellow trombone.
You resemble that. I gotcha. I'm glad that you caught that. Let me see. So we did the Blue Bells, and then Minstrel Boy, and then there's The Water is Wide. And that's also a really cool cover that's very similar to the...
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually the arches that you're looking through are from, I believe it's called St. Bees Abbey in Northern England. And that's a place that in the present day, Sean is the one caught in medieval Scotland. His girlfriend in the present day realizes that there's a way to kind of sort of contact. And so she's following this path as she does her historical research and realizes that these Scottish raiders went down, what would that be, the east side of England and up the west coast raiding. And St. Bees is one of the places, or St. Bees Priory is what it's called. And so that's a place they actually do go in the book. So I kind of like that part of the cover.
Joe Conjal says, Laura, who did the cover designs? They're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I wish I could remember his name. The first 2 are done by someone who contacted me on Facebook, and he was starting a cover design business. So he actually did those for me for free to build up his portfolio. And I will have to try and find his name and put that out there for anyone who wants to contact him. And then I designed the 3rd, 4th, and 5th covers.
Okay, and this is the 3rd, The Water is Wide. And then the 4th is Westering Home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the battle is
over. Is that a church door in the arch?
Here?
That is a castle, and I wish I could remember. I believe that's at Chillingham Castle, which is sold as the world's, this one, Westering Home, that's Fingal's Cave. And so I took that photograph of the cave entrance from a boat that was just bouncing up and down like that. So I took probably about 100 pictures and managed to find one or two that I could actually use.
And then we have the Battle of Zor.
And I believe that's Chillingham Castle in northern England. And that is a fascinating place that my husband and I went to, in part because they have a medieval herd of cattle. And by that, I mean, they have this herd of all albino white cattle that have been interbreeding for 800 years.
Wow.
And that should be impossible genetically. Wow. When you interbreed for 800 years, you should develop all sorts of health problems and things that cause the herd to fail. And for some reason, they haven't. But what's neat about it is you can see what cattle looked like in medieval times. And they look like cows, but they're much, much smaller than what we're used to. And it shows you how much we've bred size into most of our breeds of cattle. So it was, we went there for historical research so I could see what the cattle of medieval times actually did look like.
Isn't that interesting? Now, did you say they're all white?
This particular herd is, yes.
But they're not albino?
I don't know if they are albino or if they're just white, you know, the way New Zealand white rabbits or,
right. Yeah, there's all white animals that are not albinos.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if I followed up on that or not, but it's a fascinating herd because at this point they're genetically all the same animal.
So those books that we just went through the covers, those are all about the same two young men that have switched places that look similar. Are they both trombonists?
No. And that becomes the fun part of the plot because Neil is the medieval warrior who ends up in the modern time. Now, Sean, as I said, he's not a very likable person when you first meet him. He's very arrogant and obnoxious. However, he's bringing in such great business for this orchestra because he also has a degree in business and he's a showman and he knows how to market. And so they can't get rid of him because he's made this orchestra. He's made them all rich, but they can't keep him either because they're going to get sued for something, the way he behaves. And so when Neil ends up in the modern time looking like him, they're furious with him. And they're saying, if you don't pull it together and do this last concert, you are going to be fired. Well, what does the medieval man think when he hears you're going to be fired? You know,
he's on fire.
Right. He thinks he's going to the stake and he's in a panic. Like he only knows the medieval version of a trombone is called a sackbut. And so he knows what a sackbut is. He figures out they're talking about kind of the same thing. And he's like, I can't play this. So he says, well, you know, I have this head injury, but I could play harp for you. So Neil plays harp. And so that becomes a plot point of the first book, how Neil is going to pull off performing this concert and trying to get all these people who really hate Sean by this point, but he needs to get these people to help him figure out how to get back. So it was a fun thing to write.
Yeah. And how he must feel about seeing automobiles and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this is entirely different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things beyond our world. So
yes. Yeah.
Did you write all of these stories? They're all yours. I just see your name on here, right?
Yes. One of them was written by my husband, and most of them are completely fictional, but there are two in there that are based on a very, in fact, since you do paranormal research, you would be interested in this, and hopefully you have some answers for me. We went down to, what is it called? Fort, it's by Rubidoux Creek in Missouri, if that means anything to anyone. It's one of the Army camps down there. And my son was graduating from advanced. So we took the RV, went down, And my stepdaughter and I found this absolutely beautiful glade in the woods, kind of a park. And there was this beautiful pool where people go scuba diving down into the caves. And so I wanted to bring my husband back. And so I did. And I didn't realize how fast evening and night come in farther south. You know, in the north, it's a very long, slow process. And so we walked in broad daylight. We're sitting there talking. And all of a sudden I realized it's pretty dark. And I heard this heavy footfall behind us. And I turned around and nothing was there. But it's like something's back there. It sounded at least like a man, if not a very large animal. And so we started leaving. And my husband looked back and he saw this man-sized shape with kind of a head, kind of shoulders. And it was inky and black. And even he was just like, we need to get out of here. And so we both wrote a version of what happened at this location. We have no idea what that was.
What state did you say it was?
It was in Missouri, and it should be easy to find. I'm surprised at Leonard Wood. Fort Leonard Wood. So it was, I think the town might have been called Fort Wayne, something like that. That's nearby. And so when we did our research, we found out that the Trail of Tears had passed right through this area. And
now,
I thought
you saw it.
I'm sorry, what?
Did you see it? Did you say? Did you see something?
I didn't see it. My husband did.
He did.
Yeah.
What did he see?
He described it as being the height of a man, and it was kind of like a head and kind of like shoulders. But he said it was almost more like a bowling pin shape, and yet it was the size of a man. But he said it was just inky black and like the kind of black that could almost suck you into it. You know, that it was a very dark presence.
Yeah. So did it appear to be solid, or was it, you know?
I think I'm going by memory, but probably more or less solid. Yeah, I don't think it was see-through. It was nothing like that.
Yeah. Sounds like a shadow man.
Okay. Yeah, I've done some research to see if I can find if anybody else has experienced anything.
Good thing. Oh, down there in particular. Yeah, that would be good to know that.
Yeah, because I'm thinking we can't be the only ones who have ever experienced that.
No. There has to be some kind of local legend about it, or something like that.
Right.
Solid. It's a little dark, but very dark.
Oh, your husband said it felt solid, but very dark.
Yeah.
If it felt solid, then that's different than a shadow man.
Okay.
And it's actually worse.
It felt worse. It felt like get
Chris
out
said
of
it
here.
was very foreboding.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Hollis said, shh, slipping in a little late. Hi, Paul.
Okay,
We're
we
glad
won't
you
tell
made
anybody.
Hello, Paul.
it.
We need to do our first break.
Yeah, Joe Conjal said, sounds like a road trip, Aaron and Joan. He meant Rob and Joan. Sounds like a road trip. Yeah, sounds like something our team would want to go investigate for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to hear your experience and what you find out down there. I'm really curious to know what it was.
We need to take our first break. And so when we come back, you're planning on reading something for us. So don't go away, folks. We got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Now comes part 4 in the Jaguar series by retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. In this saga, Brandon, Andrea, and Naja, the Black Jaguar, go deep into the Mato Grosso jungle on a mission to rescue 2 kidnapped children. During their journey, they encounter many dangers, including Yanomami Indians, bent on revenge for the murder of one of their warriors.
Return of the Jaguar is book 4 in the Jaguar series, starting with 2 faces of the Jaguar, the Lost City, and the Jaguar's Quest. All 4 are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookseller websites worldwide. Return of the Jaguar is a must-read.
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. Two new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
And that last commercial is for Enigma Tracer by Brakefield and Berkey, also available on Amazon.
Well, back to, your last book there that we were just talking about, not your last book, the last book we were speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so neat that you and your husband wrote your own perspective on a supernatural or paranormal experience that the two of you had.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool.
It was really interesting to see what very different stories we came up with. And we both based our stories on the Trail of Tears, assuming that something happened. We assumed that they probably camped right on that pool there.
Yeah. 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 There are indigenous people things that are very different than what those of us that are, from European and Asian cultures are. It's different. A skinwalker is one, but doesn't sound like a skinwalker.
Sound like a skinwalker.
Was it really big?
It was the size of a man. Yeah,
Just
it was at least the size of a man.
It's not a watcher then. So, I don't know. We'll have to do some research.
Yeah.
We'll have our researcher do it.
I can't wait to hear what you come up with. It was unlike anything I've ever experienced, and I don't want to experience it again.
I do want to go down there. Joe was right. I want to go. I want to bring equipment. I want to see it. I want to talk to it.
Yeah, I can send you directions to exactly how to get there.
That is so cool.
Don't let it know we're coming.
I don't have its email address, so you're safe.
Okay, good. So you wanted to read, did you?
Yes. And so this is from the first book. This is a little bit of the setup as to when he wakes up in the morning and doesn't.
Scotland.
Yep. And I will warn people, Sean is not a very likable person at the beginning of the story, but it is ultimately a redemption story. So he does get better, depending on your point of view. Early morning sun pierced Sean's eyelids. He groaned, feeling the first pounding of the timpani. The after effects of too much beer and whiskey swirled in his stomach. His head sank into something soft. The sweet smell of bluebells nauseated him. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, turning away from the sun. A voice drifted up to him. He groaned. The tour guide. Wouldn't she have plenty to say, finding him here bright and early in the tower where he didn't belong? He pushed himself up, his eyes still clenched against the sun, the stone floor cool under his palms and the sun golden warm on his skin. He leaned his head against the parapet, but the floral scent wrapped around him. Voices reached out again, far away. His head spun. He risked opening his eyes. There were no cars in the lot. Funny. Whose voices had he heard? A commotion erupted on the stairs, a flurry of female voices, a swish of fabric against stone walls, and the light, hurrying steps of a woman. He groaned. The floor shifted under him again. Time to face the Dragon Lady tour guide. Dagmian show Irur, said one voice. I left him here last night, drifted lazily through Sean's brain. 'Tis unlike him not to appear for the morning meal. Sean rubbed his ear and shook his head. He was still hearing the Gaelic lilt from his dreams, although garbled and hard to understand. Two young women emerged at the top of the stairs. Young women, he scoffed. Jailbait more like it, but oh so attractive, even if they were two more of those ridiculous reenactors. The one in front, there was a force to be reckoned with. Fiery red hair shimmered round her face, blue eyes flashed, freckles danced across her pale skin. A fine blue kirtle emphasized a small waist and fell to her toes. There you are, she burst out. To Sean, it was an explosion. Turn down the volume, will you, he said. My head is pounding. Drank he too much ale? She asked. Sean stared. She was speaking Gaelic. Maybe it was the whiskey that made it sound strange. These people, he thought again, really need to join the real world. He laughed out loud. The girl gave a suspicious stare. 'Tis hardly funny. My father and all the lords await. Sean switched to the Gaelic of his camp days. What's it to you? Listen, I need a lift. He's speaking nonsense, my lady, the maid said. Are you sure 'tis only the drink? 'Twas a nasty blow he took to the head, bringing home the cattle. What blow? What cattle? He misunderstood their garbled speech, surely. Follow me, the redhead said, showing a little more concern. He was sweating last night. Perhaps the arrow wound has become infected and addled his mind. What arrow wound? I'm not addled. She ignored him. Keep the cloak tightly closed, Neil. Who knows who is about in the hall? Sean shook his head. Fine, play along. He followed the girls down the dim, twisting stairs, past the window with the stone cross inset, to the courtyard. It bustled with life. Women cooking, boys fetching, soldiers calling, and all of them hustling among the fingers of mist, pulling at their clothes. They had their children there, dressed in what looked to be authentic garb. They even had sheep in the courtyard. He wondered that they had moved all this in while he slept, and something else. Something not quite right with this picture, even apart from the fact that it lurched like a ship on the high seas. Aline led him to the wing adjoining the tower, up more stairs and down a stone hall. He remembered coming here on the tour. It hit him. He stopped abruptly. Yesterday was the last day of the living history.
That was very good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
So it takes him a while to figure out that he is not in his own time, because he ends up on a trek across the Scottish hills, which of course don't look that much different today if you're not in towns. So it does take him a little bit to realize these are not reenactors.
Joe Conjal says, excellent reading. Nice job. Interesting passage. Drew me right in. I agree,
Thank you.
Joe. It's a really good. It was really good reading. That's going to make a nice little short and a little reel for you to have. It'll be good.
Thanks.
Now, I like the way you write. That was really.
Thank you.
Fun. It was really fun. And it did bring you right in. Want to know more about it.
That's actually a little bit of an abridged version. There is some more detail in there, but I cut out unnecessary things to fit it into a few minutes.
Yeah.
Now, you also wrote a book that talked about their menu or what they had at their feet.
Yes. Yeah. I briefly, for maybe a couple of years, I had a publicist, and she was struck by the descriptions of food in the book. And so she asked me to put together a new book that had a scene in which they're eating, and then gave some of the history behind it, and then gave some recipes. So this book has medieval recipes. It has modern recipes. It has recipes for food to eat if you happen to be traveling through the wilderness on the way to battle. which I'm sure is very likely for most of us. So there is a recipe in here that teaches you how to make your boar's head breathe smoke. There is a recipe to have 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie and come out singing. There is a recipe to make your chicken appear like it's just come out of the oven and is roasted, but when your unsuspecting guest goes to carve it, it comes to life and starts running around the table. So I found in my research for this book that medieval people, I don't know if you can hear my dog. She's decided to fuss and whine. Bad timing. I discovered that medieval people were amazingly creative and had a lot of fun with their food. So, you know, your mother said, don't play with your food. They didn't listen.
They played with their food. They
had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. I didn't know they really did things like that, like make the blackbirds sing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating way they did it. And it didn't harm the birds. They literally were alive inside the pie and came out.
Yeah, 4 and 20 blackbirds. Mm-hmm. Who knew that was real?
Yeah, I didn't until I did the research for this book.
That's pretty cool. So about what year was this set in, would you say?
My books are set from early June 1314 up to about late 1319.
Okay, so the 1300s.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's way back there.
It's interesting doing research that far back, although that's kind of on the cusp where I think they had really started keeping records a lot more than maybe even a few hundred years earlier. So you can find an awful lot, but, you know, not as much as you would find if you're researching 20 years ago.
Right. And more than if you're researching almost 2,000 years ago. So
yes. Yeah.
I've been researching for 8 years a book about wait a minute, Marjorie Deering. Bring it up. All right. Is that your or your it's interesting that even your dogs are lovely foreign.
Right. That is my Irish Wolfhound, and she is 10 years old. Yeah. And well, she will be in a few weeks. And this breed typically only lives 6 to 8 years. Yeah. So she's probably her hips hurt, and we took her out just before we started this to try and avoid exactly this. And the Bernese mountain dog is out in his field right now because if I'm not checking on him every 30 seconds, he'll be, I don't know, eating my plants or chewing up my couch or, you know, dragging my boots around. And if I leave the laundry room door open, something more embarrassing than that.
Wonderful. Laura, do you fully outline your books, or are you a pantser discovery writer? Joe Congel's asking.
I think she might come in here and get in the camera. Let's give a look. Are you going to get in the camera, pretty girl, huh? Are you going to say hi? Yeah, you want to see what's going on. I would say I'm more of a pantser. And one comment I've had on my books from multiple people is that the characters, and it kind of hurts me to call them characters, seem very real. And I think that's in part because I don't necessarily plot it all out. And so they just sometimes seem to speak and act for themselves.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And sometimes that causes me trouble. Anyone familiar with this series will know who Angus is. He's a modern cop who steps in and starts helping Amy, who is the girlfriend in the modern times. And I often said, I wish he would just go away because I was having a really hard time. Like, what am I supposed to do with this situation? But I've always said Amy was sitting there by the field where Sean disappeared and Angus walked in and I'm like, who are you? He's like, well, I'm Angus. I'm the cop. And
surprise.
And every time I said, I'm going to write you out, he's like, no, you're not. I'm staying. And so he did.
I think the characters are real to your readers because they're real to you. I don't see
I would guess, yeah.
I don't see how you can make your characters real if they don't seem real to you.
Right. And, they do seem, I don't know if you experience this as a writer, but sometimes it felt almost more like I'm just watching a parallel universe and transcribing what I'm seeing. It never felt like I was really creating this world or these people or this situation.
Well, when writing the book that we're publishing in April, there were parts where I cried because of what happened to the characters.
Was it things you hadn't planned on?
I think, for me and for Rob, it happens like it does for you. They go wherever they want to go. And it was just things that had happened to this one particular character that made me really cry, that they had to go through that. Really sad. But I did know that was going to happen, though. But still, when I was writing it and it became real, it was really sad.
Were you at all tempted to delete and redo that? And
No. It was something that he had to go through. So
an important part.
Very important.
We need to take our second break.
Wow,
So
time
that
is
was fast,
guys.
Got a lot more to talk about.
So fast.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Police officer Madison Jackson awakes to discover her baby kidnapped from her crib. Was it revenge for someone she arrested or something far more sinister? Madison's estranged husband is incarcerated in Supermax. As the second in command of a deadly Mexican cartel, did he issue the order to abduct their daughter? Bye, Baby, Bye, from author Kelly Marshall. Get your copy today.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
Step into the captivating world of skullduggery, where a family of isolated peasant copyholders finds themselves thrust into a web of danger that threatens their very existence. Set against the tumultuous backdrop of the English Reformation, this meticulously researched historical mystery unfolds with a cast of both lovable and despicable characters, immersing you in a fully realized world that's both utterly believable and fantastically unbelievable. Author Paul Rushworth Brown weaves a spellbinding narrative that transports you to Yorkshire, England, in the 16th and 17th centuries, offering an authentic and gritty portrayal of peasant life. The pages come alive with vivid descriptions, crafting an atmosphere that pulls you deeper into a story of crime, murder, and suspense like no other.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth Brown, author of Skullduggery, Red Winter Journey, and Demon Courage, just recently released. I hope you enjoy Skullduggery, the second edition. Cheers.
We're back.
Yes, and I wanted to get in some of your other books. Time is flying by.
Time is traveling along.
Yes.
Now, this is not part of your series.
No.
This is Saint in the Cellar. And you wrote this with your husband.
Right.
Yeah?
Yes. And this is an interesting story how this came to be. At one point, he and I were looking at houses, and this was back in maybe 2015 or so. We were looking at houses to buy, and we looked at this historic mansion on Summit Hill in St. Paul, which is kind of, the hoity-toity area. It's up by the cathedral. And this is where a lot of the kind of wealthy, in this case, lumber barons, the titans of the late 1800s built their homes. And so we looked at this beautiful historic mansion. It had this massive, huge entryway and beautiful gardens in the back overlooking the river that runs through St. Paul. And I happen to be doing a lot of research still for my series. So in the like roughly 12 to 1400s, there was something called anchorites or anchoresses. And these were people who, it's hard to believe in our modern time, but they would actually have themselves sealed into a cell for the rest of their lives. And this cell had a window. It was always built on the side of a church. So it had a window looking into the church so they could attend mass. And it had another window looking out to the street so that they could talk to people in the street, counsel them, pray for them, things like that. And then they had someone bring them food and they could devote their days to prayer and study. And so, because I had just been reading about this, we went into this gorgeous house, looked at all this gorgeous stuff from the late 1800s and the style houses were built. We went down to the basement, which the word basement doesn't do it justice. It was beautiful. It had this gorgeous runner down the hall and this massive, huge white room at the end. And it had this big room that had been a laundry room, but it was now being used like almost as a greenhouse with all these plants everywhere. And we turned around and we noticed there's like a grill with bars, and went back into the hall, and sure enough, there's a cell. And we looked at each other and went, there's a saint in the cellar. And then we went, that's a great title. We have to write a book to go with that. And so we did. So Chris started it, and I don't know, he got maybe 15, 20 pages, kind of gave the setup, and I did most of the rest, but there was a little back and forth and adding to it and so on. And so it's the story of Jacob, who I believe is 5. He's just short of his 6th birthday. And his parents are kind of young, up-and-coming professionals. They're both very busy with very professional careers. And Jacob has what might be a very active imagination, or maybe he's really experiencing something. And so, he kind of half lives in this fantasy world where he's fighting dragons with his best friend, King Methred. So in this fantasy world, he's more like 19 or 20. And he's got to save the villagers, and he's got to save the people of the castle. And in his real life, his parents get him this awful nanny / cook / housekeeper who teaches him French and manners. And, his mother believes he has to really have this proper education to make it in the business world as an adult. And so he goes down and he finds this man living in this room, in this cellar, and the basement, and starts talking to him. And he says, well, I'm an anchorite, I live here and I pray for you, and pray for your family. I pray for anyone who lives here. And so he starts making friends with this rambunctious family next door, which upsets his mother. And it goes through about, again, there's a little bit of a story of redemption about how his parents kind of come to realize that they need to be there a little bit more for him. And then the question at the end is, what did Jacob really experience?
That's really cool.
Cool.
I like that. So you decide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know what I, as the author, think the answer is.
I know what I think. Can you guess what I think?
I'm guessing that being a paranormal researcher, you really was going on.
I think he did see the saint in the cellar. Yes, exactly right. I don't know about the dragons and stuff. That might have been his imagination, but who am I? Here's On Wings of Love and Light. And again, this is written with your husband. Poetry Stories on Love.
Yep. Yeah, that's one that we put out, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago. And it's pretty much exactly what it says. It's poems, it's essays, kind of talking about what is the heart of love really, it's not just warm, fuzzy feelings, you're really attractive or whatever, but what love really is at its heart.
Marjorie Deering says, do you prefer writing solo or in tandem with another writer? I see you've done both. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I do have one other book. I didn't think about sending you the cover. I should have. And that book is called 221 BC. That I say I co-wrote it, kind of shorthand. Dr. Kendall Price in St. Paul actually wrote it, and then he sends me the manuscript. I do a lot of filling in, adding scenes. I send it back to him, and we go back and forth. So he was gracious enough to put my name on the cover. And I did enjoy that. I think I like writing together because there's a little bit of accountability, and it's sometimes easier to stay on task when you're working with someone. But I think that in the end, I probably like writing alone better because then I don't have to wait for somebody else to do their part.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, how did you like writing with your husband?
I found that a very easy process. With the poetry book, we each just wrote our own poems and essays. And then I kind of chose, I've got a document of about 600 pages of poetry. And so I chose out the ones that were appropriate for this book. I took some of his work. He's got, a fair wealth of poetry too. So I picked those out. We each wrote essays and I compiled them. So that was fairly easy. And with something like The Saint in the Cellar, again, I find that pretty easy. He did the setup and I did most of the rest. And then he kind of went through, gave some ideas on what I had done, a little bit of kind of editing and suggestions. And we do have a couple more books. We have one called The Wedding that is, he needs to go through and put the humor into it. And we're also working somewhat together. I do most of the writing, but we're working on a series called the Ivy League novels that was spawned when I was coming home from a book event with my son. So from Florida, you probably know Amelia Island.
Yeah.
So this was in January, I think, of 2019, and we were coming home, and as we got closer to the north, it got colder and more snowy, and I was sick, and I ordered chicken noodle soup at the IHOP, and my son ordered steak. He was like 16 at the time, and they brought him his steak, and 20 minutes later finally came and told me we don't have chicken noodle soup. And of course, for an author, we always go, well, why? What if, what was going on in that kitchen that it took them 20 minutes? So of course we started thinking, and obviously there was murder going on in the kitchen. I mean, what else could it be, right?
What else could it be?
Right.
Hold on just for a second. I want to get this up here. We're going to have to say goodbye to our Michigan audience. I mean, Michigan.
Atlanta.
I don't know where that came from. Our Atlanta audience in a minute. So I want to get your website out here so all of those people listening to the Atlanta radio station will have it too. And her website is lauravosika.com, and you spell it LAURAVOSIKA, course.com. And then I wanted to put up booksandbrews.net, BOOKSANDBREWS.net. And can people reach you at either one of those places at Books and Brews?
Yes. If you go to my website, lauravosika.com, there is a contact page and it's under the About. And if you go to, and that will come to me, if you go to Books and Brews, I believe it's my co-host, Michael Agnew, who is Minnesota's first beer cicerone. He's the one who would get that, but he always forwards it to me.
All right. Awesome. Okay. That's really good. We have another comment. And let's see. Marjorie Deering says, the test of a strong marriage.
Writing together or writing about love in particular?
I think she meant writing together.
Yeah.
That's what all we do is write together. We do have a strong marriage.
Yeah. Well, Chris's job keeps him pretty busy, so that's a lot of why I end up doing more of the writing, but he always has good insight. And so for this Ivy League series, he's much better at adding. It's meant to be almost parody on the noir style. And he's much better at throwing that kind of the noir sort of comments in there, whereas I get too serious about things.
Okay, we have 2 more comments here. George Dismuke says time travel is very real. Just yesterday I was 21. I know.
No kidding, right?
That's the truth.
Yep.
How do you decide who you have on your podcast?
I go to various writers groups on Facebook usually, and I'll just say we're open for guests again, and I'll get 30 to 50 people volunteering to be on there, because who doesn't love free advertising, right? And so I go through their books. Every once in a while, like if I'm on Twitter, I'll see a book that just sounds interesting, and I'll contact the author and invite them to be on. And so I try to keep a mix. We have a poet coming up next month. It's been a little bit since we did a poet, but I try to keep a mix of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, the various genres of fiction. I've had some newer authors, and I've had some bigger name authors. So that's exciting.
How often do you have a show?
Right now, just once a month. And I don't know if we might increase that. Michael and I have a program where we can only upload roughly about an hour a month. I might do some that I just put up on YouTube, but not on the podcast page.
So any of our authors that are listening, could they contact
Absolutely.
you? Okay, great. That's great.
Yeah, right now I'm booked up till September, but and sometimes for some reason something falls through, like somebody gets sick or, things happen, and then I need somebody to fill in right away. So if I have a list.
Okay, cool. Right now we want to say goodnight to all the people that are listening on WDJY 99.1 FM in Atlanta. Thank you for tuning in, and hope to see you next week.
And everybody else, stay tuned. Go ahead, finish your thought now. We just had to do that because they did it off.
Yeah, that was pretty much the end of the thought. Just that if I have a list, even if in theory they're not scheduled for 7 or 8 months out, I might call and say, there was an emergency and I need someone to fill in right away.
Right.
George Dismuke said you should check out San Leon / Bay Area authors.
That's on Facebook.
That's on Facebook.
Facebook? Okay. I will look into that.
Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But yes, I think that she'd be happy to hear from any of you that if you'd be interested in being on her show.
Yep.
And bring your beer.
Yeah. If I get organized now, the last 8 months have been really, really chaotic. We've had emergency surgeries. We've had a cross-country move. We added sheep, which I've never taken care of. But as I get into kind of this new rhythm of life, I hope to send the cocktail recipes. Michael Agnew is taking a break right now, so Chris is filling in, and he's doing cocktails instead of beer, pairing cocktails to the readings. And so what I would like to do is send those ahead of time. And I should add too, you don't have to drink. I would say probably at least a quarter of our guests are teetotalers. They just don't drink. And that's fine. You don't need to. It's just a fun way of talking about books and brews.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. We used to, during COVID, we belonged to a Zoom group when all of us were Zooming and because we were all quarantined. And it was called Haunted Happy Hour.
Yes.
I remember the name.
That sounds like fun.
Yes, it was fun. It was a really fun group of people. We enjoyed ourselves very much. Good people. Yeah, all good people. We're still friends with them. We just don't do Haunted Happy Hour anymore because we're all very busy.
Right.
But 2 years running, we all spent New Year's Eve with each other because everybody was still under quarantine.
By Zoom, was it a book club about hauntings or about books or books about hauntings?
It was just a Zoom group of people getting together, and it was called Haunted Happy Hour. So the idea was you would drink, and
we tried to have a topic every.
Okay.
We would have a topic, and the gal who started it owns a ghost tour in New Jersey, and a shop that's attached to the ghost tour. And so she wasn't doing her ghost tour, and she loves still talking about all the paranormal stuff. So
we went on a couple of ghost tours in Key West. I take it you've been on a few of these ghost tours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we usually investigate ourselves, but if we go on a ghost tour, it's usually to some place that we can't get into unless we go on the ghost tour.
Right.
Okay. It was really
Yeah.
interesting doing the two of them, because one was very much, the guides in costume and being all scary, and it was fun, and
that's what Genevieve does. She's dressed up.
And as we drove by, people on the street would shout, I think it was, "This is the bus of the damned." And we were supposed to shout back, "Yes, we are the damned." So it was all fun and games and, kind of jokes and humor. But then the other one was run by a man who calls himself Southernmost Ted. And he's very much into paranormal research. I think he has a couple of books out on research and what you're looking for, and is there a way we can actually prove this? Can we measure it? Can we get photographs? So he was very much more serious, and that was a walking tour. But it was really interesting seeing how very different these two were.
Yeah. Joe said, Joan, are those recorded, the Haunted Happy Hour?
No.
I don't think so. I hope not, Joe.
No.
Because a lot of the people were drinking.
Yes.
We don't drink, but
we were amused.
We were very amused.
Sometimes it's fun just to be the one watching.
It was humorous.
But everybody was serious about, being into the paranormal.
Yes.
And so it's really a good, a lot of information, and a lot of the things, of course, we already had studied and we knew about, and it was really kind of fun to meet people that also were really into that and understood all that. So, and we met a lot of interesting people that we asked to come on the show, and two gals. One was here in Florida, and she was part of a group, another paranormal group here in Florida called the Soul Sisters. And she split off from that group and got together with this other gal that we know that was a solo paranormal investigator. And she was like a gal on a motorcycle, and that's what she did. She traveled all over the country by motorcycle doing paranormal investigations. And they went in together and they bought an old haunted jail in Tennessee.
Northeastern Tennessee.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
Northeastern Tennessee.
Northeastern Tennessee.
What town?
Now, gosh, I don't remember.
Fayetteville?
I can find out for you, though.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because we're northeastern Tennessee, more or less. We're right by the Kentucky-Virginia border.
They do private tours. You can go in and do private investigations, or you can go in and do part of their tour. And
I'm just wondering if it's the jail in, I think it's Tazewell or New Tazewell, because the town just south of us, there is a jail, and I think I've seen signs for hauntings and haunted tours there.
That it could be they refurbished it and made it safe and pleasant for people to go through, but they actually live there, and these spirits are they're there all the time. It was interesting because I asked her, and this has bothered me a lot about being a paranormal investigator, is a lot of the public places, I'm not talking about the homes that we go in to investigate. I'm talking about the public places like, Gettysburg and places like that.
Yeah.
All these people coming through doing all of these investigations and the private tours and everything. And it's just constant, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me.
Mhm.
And I mean, it would drive me crazy if someone was constantly coming into my house expecting me to perform, you know?
Mhm.
So I asked them if it was upsetting for the spirits that lived there. Were they upset? Did they hate it? You know? And they said no, they really enjoy it. They love interacting with people. And if they don't feel like it, or if they don't like the people, they don't say anything.
Huh. So are ghosts like dogs? They each have their own personality, and some like it and some wouldn't, or
I would think so. They're people.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have different personalities.
Right.
You know?
And I guess I would wonder how that fits with, you know, this idea that there are different types of ghosts, that some are more recordings left over and not sentient. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yes, that's called an intelligent haunt and a residual haunt.
Okay.
And so what they're talking about is an intelligent haunt, where there are people there that know that they're there and they're talking to you. A residual haunt it could be anything that happened and left like an imprint on that place, and it plays back like a recording.
Okay.
They're never going to interact with you. They're never going to say anything to you or know that you're there. It'd be like watching a movie. The person in the movie doesn't interact with you. They don't know you're there.
My last guest, in fact, her podcast hasn't even gone up. It won't go up until March, was Teresa Halverson. And her full book that I read, because I try and read at least one full book of an author before their interview, is called River City Widows. And it delves into this about the different kinds of ghosts, the sentient, or I think you said intelligent, and the kinds that are more just like recordings left on the atmosphere. And then there was the third kind, and I can't remember what she called that.
I don't know what you would call the third kind, but there are a lot of things that people might think would be ghosts, and they're not ghosts. They're inhuman. They've never been human.
She did get into that in the book, and yeah.
But there are inhuman things that, you know.
Yeah, I was telling you yesterday in our previous house about what we think was our ghost that took our box of wine and our Irish cream, and then left gifts for us. In fact, I happen to have it.
Oh, funny.
This is the candle that was left on the mantelpiece.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, in our previous house, and we had never seen it. That mantle happened to be completely bare, like nothing was on it. And we'd been in the house 8 months, and I happened to look up one day, and there it was. And I don't know, I suppose a skeptic would say somehow I just didn't notice it for 8 months, but you know, it's like it's not a big candle, but it's not very small either. And I find it hard to believe I just didn't see it there
for 8 months. And from that you bought it.
Unlikely,
Yeah, that would definitely be. I would think that what you experienced in where was it?
Duluth.
No,
Fort Leonard Wood.
Fort Leonard Wood.
Oh, Fort Leonard Wood, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be an inhuman.
Yeah.
I do not think that is a human.
I think that was very much Chris's belief. You know, I didn't see it, but I definitely heard the footfall of what was at least the size of a man. It was something that was heavy, like, 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think that was a human.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't think it ever been a human. So, yeah. So what I was talking about was definitely an intelligent human spirit. That's there is a type of investigator that will provoke to get an interaction from the spirit. In other words, they try to make them angry or upset. And we don't do that. No one in our team does that. Our team doesn't believe in it, because if you want to talk to me, you'll talk to me. And if you don't want to, well, then you don't have to, right? And my screaming, yelling at you is not a nice way to make you so angry that you then have interaction with me. So
it doesn't seem to me like a good idea to try
I don't
and
think it's
provoke anyone. Anything.
No. Why would you do that? So we don't do that, but some people do that. And so that's what I was concerned about, is that, you know, I'm going into these places, we're going into these places. And if the last person that went there, I'm talking about public places, of course, not private homes that we investigate. But if we go in there and investigate and there's been a whole bunch of jerks doing stuff like that, you know, then they're not going to want to have anything to do.
Right.
Yeah,
we might get a bad reception.
We might. We might get a really bad reception.
How often?
The fact that it's not fair to them, I don't like that.
Right.
Right. How often do you end up being the second, third, fourth person who's gone in?
On a public place?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there are hundreds.
On any of your, no, let's say in a private home, you know, how often do you run into this where they've been provoked before?
But it's
generally we're the first and the only one.
Yes, sometimes we're not.
Recently, we've been in a home that this person, and I'm not going to say anything that would allude to who this person is or what their deal is, but we were the third group.
Okay.
And this person has continued to contact us and prefers our group, but there's really nothing that we can do to help her.
We did give some suggestions, and just to our knowledge, they were never followed. So
okay. So in general, can you give ideas to stop the activities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I think we can probably, help anybody. And if it's something that we're not capable of handling, we can bring in the person that can.
Okay.
You know, like we wouldn't want to even consider that we could talk to any kind of an indigenous spirit. You know, you would need a shaman from their tribe to come in and talk to her, because we'd have no business doing that. We don't speak their language.
You know, I think the end goal is if we can live in peace.
Yeah. And, you know, okay, so private homes, here's the funny part. I remember this one home in particular where we had been multiple times. All right. And in the end, we finally were able to make contact and find out more about who this was, the person was. And in the end, the homeowner said, well, he can stay.
Okay.
And this was after being afraid and wanted a resolve. And, you know, we had continued to tell them, well, this doesn't seem, you know, negative or dangerous in any way. Mainly, we thought he just wanted to be recognized and acknowledged. But he was touching the children in the house. And we had told him that you cannot do that from day one. We said, no more of that. And also would like come up from the floor in one little boy's room, come up from the floor, which scared the little boy, rightly so.
Understandably. Well, it's interesting because, as I had mentioned, whatever was in our house, it seemed to be very benevolent. It seemed, we thought, to have a sense of humor even. And the only thing that happened that was a little disturbing, we actually have a passage between two of the bedrooms upstairs in that house, not the house we live in now, but the one in Duluth. And so it's actually like the air conditioning, but it's big enough that you can crawl through from one bedroom to the other. And so there's a door on on the one bedroom. And so we had a dresser in front of it, and we had put a mirror propped up on that dresser that partially covered that door. And one of my sons was there one night, and all of a sudden this door just flew open, knocked the mirror off, sent it shattering to the ground. And that was very odd. And, we tried to explain it. Well, maybe it was something about the wind. But that door was kind of, you had to kind of yank on it to get it open. And my son definitely did not want to sleep in that room again. But, that was an aberration. Everything else we experienced there was very benevolent and even humorous.
Yeah. Interesting. It would have been interesting to investigate that house.
We still own it. If you get up there fast, you can.
I don't think so.
I don't think we can get up there that fast. We're kind of booked.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about, maybe touch briefly about your poetry, but other poetry books.
Yeah.
One is Startled by Love.
Mm-hmm.
New poetry in traditional forms.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can get these in order. Is that 2021? Okay. So
you edited that one. Did you contribute in any way to that one?
No. So what I do is I put out a call for submissions, and the genesis behind these books was that I had been going to a lot of poetry open mics, and a lot of people there do free form, which can be done very well. But I'm kind of a firm believer that if you work in forms, it gives you a better ear for cadence, for rhythm, for sounds, and then your free form is going to be better too. And also, I think it's becoming a lost art. So I do pay the poets who submit to this. I mean, if I accept them. And each year I have a theme. So the first one was joy. And so a traditional form would be a sonnet, a villanelle, a triolet. They're endless forms. And really the only criteria is it sort of a traditional form that actually has some rules about syllables or number of lines or rhyming schemes, something like that. This one is Startled by Nature. And I did want to mention, I'm rather proud of the fact that my featured poet this year, this first year, was Thomas R. Smith. And he and Timothy Young both actually worked with Robert Bly. So I was pretty excited to have people like that in my book. And I also wanted to mention this cover. I do design the covers on these too. This is my photography. I went out with a nature photographer, and we were actually looking for birds. And all of a sudden he tapped me. We were in a boat. He tapped me on the shoulder and pointed, and there's a bear in the water 20 feet. So I was snapping pictures while I screamed, get away, get away, get away. And he's like, it's not going to hurt. Well, it wasn't until we were way far away that he said, it wouldn't have hurt us. And I'm like, yeah, but you were pulling the boat away pretty quick too. So I don't know if he really was just being nice to me or if he was scared. I don't know. And then the theme for this year, 2022, was laughter. The theme for 2023 is music. And that one, despite it no longer being 2023, it will come out the last 6-7 months of 2023, as I said, was 2 emergency surgeries, long recuperation, and a cross-country move. So something had to give in learning how to take care of sheep. So I am going to plan on putting out 2023 and 2024 this year. People can contact me at gabrielshornpress@gmail.com. And the theme for 2023 is music, and for 2024 is faith. So any traditional form.
Nice.
Okay.
So then you'll have joy, you'll have love, joy, laughter, nature, music, and faith.
Yep.
Nice.
Nice.
Those are all wonderful things.
Yeah. I have them planned out I have the themes for about the next 5 years, I think. I picked those ahead of time.
Wonderful. That's really nice. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Well, I will mention this book. This is a fun project that we did, and I need to actually republish this at KDP because this was done through Shutterfly, and it's just way too expensive, although it's a beautiful book. And so this is my husband's photography, and a lot of it is some of it is in Florida, so, the Panama City Beach area, and some of it is in Key West. A bunch of it is in Scotland, so I happen to like that picture quite a bit. And then what we did is I took his photography and I went through and set poetry to it. So
nice.
And some of these, so what we do with these is we're always trying to compare and contrast the colors of nature and of the person. So in this one, you've got the very kind of monochromatic colors with the person all in red. And we've got some in here. So this one would be more comparing that you've got the greens of the sea with the greens of the clothing. We have one, there was a really fun day, if I can find this really quick, where I dressed all in white. I'm the anonymous person in here. So I dressed all in white to match the snow. And unfortunately, I'm having a hard time getting this centered on the camera. But we have a whole series of pictures of the person all in white, maybe with a red scarf or something against all the white of the snow. And so that was, here's another one. This was one of the first ones we did. So it's the chromatic clothing set against all the colors of the leaves. And so we've had a lot of fun with that. And here's, I'll show you just one more. So this would be one where it's all the white clothing against the white snow, but with the bright red scarf. So this is a book that we do have available, and we have a smaller version of it. And then I have a journal called The Four Spheres, Habits for Building a Better Life. And that's more of a journal where you kind of write down, did you do something emotional, intellectual, physical, and spiritual each day? And that's to help you cover those 4 areas that philosophers say you should be covering each day. I have a book of music out called Glen Merrill Garden, and that's music I wrote in Celtic jigs and reel styles. So I have quite a bit out there, and
you do.
Yep, I've got about a dozen more in the works right now. If I could just, find 10 hours a day to write.
At the time, yes. And so, can they find all of those on your website?
The poetry book is not on my website. You could contact me and buy it, and then I'll start reprinting them at Amazon. Everything except the poetry book is available at Amazon, or you can order them through any brick and mortar store. And so they should all be available in ebook too.
They should be able to find it on Amazon or else. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Everything that you just talked about, except
the poetry book.
The poetry book. Yeah.
And that they could go to your website and contact you there.
Yes. And I don't know if I actually have that up on my website because it's not easily available. So that I should put that on my list to redo that. Amazon does hardcover now. Yeah.
They can contact you at your website.
They could, yeah.
Get it that way.
Get it that way.
Okay.
Well, good.
Sounds good.
Wow.
All right.
This has been fun.
It has been. And I think we better say goodnight. Laura, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate
Thank you.
It. And your books sound very good.
We've got another comment. All of your books sound
go ahead and
fascinating.
over to the side here.
Joe Conchal. Love the show tonight. Thank you, Laura. And of course, Rob and Joan. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Oh, DJ McCool has been so quiet, quietly watching. Great show. Thank you.
Thanks, Del.
Thank you.
It's been a very, very interesting show. We've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Talked about paranormal.
There you go.
Joan's a happy camper.
There you go.
No,
That's
I am
fantastic.
no joke. Yeah, one more comment.
Yes.
Yes, it has. It has been a lot of fun.
All
Yes.
right. Okay. Well, then I guess until next time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thank
You're
you
very
for being
welcome.
here. Another comment. One more comment.
I guess until the next comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, I love you so much. I
Wrote them.
I know it's coming.
Reader. That's why.
All right. So until next time.
That's all, folks.
All right. Good night.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen G's welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.